Good morning, bird nerds. Good afternoon, bird nerds, if you're not watching live. Good evening, bird nerds, if you're staying up late. I'm Grant Williams. This is the Bird Emergency, the show where I get to talk to amazing bird people. And today, it's somebody who's about to embark on a pretty epic journey, 20,000 kilometres in a microlight, following the coastline of Australia. What was it? I'll introduce you now, Milly. Amelia Formby, who is the Shorebirds Project Officer at BirdLife Australia, and a zoologist, and an adventurer. You've got on your bio on your website, Milly. You must be a little bit crazy too. Welcome to the Bird Emergency. How are you?
Thanks, Grant. Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Now, the reason Milly's talking to me is not just because we want to talk about shorebirds, because every day should be Shorebird Day. But Milly's about to fly a microlight, not an ultralight. We've got to talk about the distinctions.
Yep.
Around the coast of Australia, basically to highlight the amazing migratory journeys that shorebirds undertake. And, of course, talked about lots of shorebirds. We're big curlew fans on the Bird Emergency. Milly, first I have to ask you, where did this idea come from?
That's a bit of a story. Hey, so I started working in shorebird conservation about 2014. So I got involved with the Victorian Wader Studies group, and so I've been banding and flagging shorebirds for quite a while. And then I moved over to Perth to start a new job at the University of WA over there in the animal biology department. And one of the other technicians there was telling me how his brother flew microlights and how they wanted to fly around Australia together and raise money for Royal Flying Doctor Service. And I guess a seed was planted in my mind, I guess. And then next day I was driving to Bunnings for work. And this idea just hit me like a bolt out of the blue when I stopped at the traffic lights, that I could learn to fly a microlight and follow the shorebirds on migration to Siberia. So I think somewhere in my subconscious, the two shorebirds and this microlight idea kind of got squished together and popped out like that. And
Had you always had a fascination with shorebirds, with the journeys that they undertake? And when did you first become aware of of these really small, most of them are small, very, very, very insignificant looking birds to the general public? When did you become aware that they were just these titans of the air?
Yeah, they are titans, aren't they? I actually learned about them from a fellow artist. So before I got into science and zoology, I did a visual arts degree at Monash, and I majored in tapestry of all things. And I became a tapestry weaver for 7 years at the Australian Tapestry Workshop in South Melbourne. And I was working on a tapestry with John Wolseley, who's a really well-known Australian artist, and he does a lot of beautiful watercolours of swamps and wetlands, and they often feature a lot of birds as well. And he'd just done a mural in Melbourne about shorebirds, and I think it was called Swamps and Cries of Wetland Birds or something like that. I can't remember the title. Anyway, there was an unveiling of the mural in the city, and I learned about all these knots and godwits and stints that were in the mural. And I'd never heard of them before. And Penny Johns from Victorian Wader Studies Group was there giving a talk about the shorebirds and talking about John. And I was just blown away. And that's when I got into helping out with the Victorian Wader Studies Group. So I probably saw that mural in like 2012 or something like that. But that was the first time I'd ever heard of shorebird migration. Yeah.
And how did the idea form in your head that you wanted to fly an approximately similar distance to was it the adventure part of it that popped up first, or is it the educational and awareness raising part that really got you going?
Yeah, it was definitely the awareness raising aspect of it. So working in shorebird conservation, it became really apparent to me that one of the biggest difficulties to overcome with these birds is actually getting the word out there that they exist in the first place. Most people don't know what shorebirds are, and it's really common for people to mix shorebirds up with seabirds. So they'll go, "Oh, I've heard about muttonbirds," and they think that muttonbirds and shorebirds are the same thing, because muttonbird migration is it's often talked about because people see them washed up on the beach a lot. And so just getting the word out there that the two groups are distinctive, and showing people about shorebird migration and how epic it is, it's a real challenge to be able to do that. And when I came up with this idea, like, it really was a bolt out of the blue, it just hit me, and it kind of shook me to my core, you know. It went, oh my goodness, I can actually do this if I decide to do it. And it took me many months before I actually did anything about it. But I was thinking, I reckon a female pilot getting out there and flying, doing this epic adventure would probably bring a lot of attention to the birds themselves. Yeah.
Well, that's almost self-evident nowadays, because you know that since the movie Fly Away Home, I mean, yes. I'm just going on an old man's faulty memory here, but I think that was an Oscar-winning movie. It certainly launched the acting career of that was Anna Paquin, wasn't it?
Yeah,
who was in that? So it certainly got the potential to draw a lot of attention, and this week you've been getting a lot of attention, which has been terrific, because this week is special because it's the delayed launch, and we'll talk about why it was delayed a little bit, of the Wing Threads project, which it is great. And I want you to tell everyone why it's great and what the project actually is, Milly.
Okay. So the project is called Wing Threads Flight Around Oz. And as you mentioned earlier on, I'm planning to fly my Microlight all the way around Australia along the coastline. And the plan is to stop at schools and libraries along the way and share my new children's book, which is called A Shorebird Flying Adventure, with students and teachers in schools and libraries all around the coast. And the book, Shorebird Flying Adventure, was commissioned by CSIRO Publishing in 2019 after they heard me give a talk at the AOC in Darwin. And they came up to me afterwards and said, would you like to do a kids' book? We'd like to have more female role models in STEM. And that was just a no-brainer for me. And I was thinking earlier, actually, it's perfect that we're having this chat today, because it's International Day of Women and Girls in Science. And the Shorebird Flying Adventure book is all about, having female role models in STEM. And the book, in the book, Microlight Milly is the main character, and she takes the reader on a journey through the East Asian Australasian flyway, and it shows how amazing and awesome migratory shorebirds there are, and they learn all about their behavioural ecology.
Something that seems a bit of a disconnect for me as someone who's outside of the actual community of science educators and bird people is when I look at all the names of the people who are active promoting the work, being engaged in all of the engagement activities, so many of the leaders seem to me to be women, Milly. So it's well. You just have a look at the people that I've talked to on the show, and I do something regular with Holly from BirdLife. We've got Claire Greenwell, we've got Tegan, we've got you. Yesterday, I talked to Kylie Soanes, I talked to Kate Ravage, Sally Bryant. I mean, the leaders seem to be equally, if not more, women in the communication space. And God, I hate saying that word, They're just activities that people are doing.
Yeah.
Is it still a massive wall that needs to be belted down, that women are not getting a fair go still in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, education?
Yeah, I definitely think women have bigger hurdles to climb in that sphere. And obviously, women have different challenges to face as well when it comes to having science careers, because women have that choice whether or not to have children, and then whether or not to stay home and look after their children. And that has a big impact when you're working in a science career, especially if you're in academia or some kind of research field. I know that I've got a lot of friends who've had career setbacks for making that choice. My sister's one of them as well. She's an immunologist. And I think there needs to be more things in place to help women navigate those particular times in their life, those moments in your life that you have to navigate as a scientist. And there's only 28% of women employed in STEM fields in Australia as of last year, going by the statistics. And research shows that the best way to get girls into STEM careers is to have positive role models of them. So I think it's absolutely vital that, we're out there and showing girls what can be done. Yeah.
Well, if that's an average that can be drawn across all of the sort of science fields nationally, it's going to vary internationally. But if we're talking about Australia, that means there are some really extraordinary people working in bird world in Australia, because they're the ones that are visible and that are talking beyond the community. And that's what I really appreciate about all of you. Now, I want to know, how much guts does it take to get in a microlight, and is that a separate passion like flying, or is it a means to an end for you?
Oh no, it's very much a passion. But I didn't get into flying until I came up with this project. So I never went, I want to be a pilot when I grow up or anything like that. I didn't know any pilots. I never considered it until I talked to my mate about flying them. So when I came up with this idea, I think that idea hit me at the beginning of 2015, and I didn't actually do a trial instructional flight in a microlight until later that year in November. And I went, I better see if I actually like flying, if I want to. So I went and had, it's called a TIFF, a trial instructional flight. I went and did that with Gordon Marshall out at Sky Sports Flying School, which is about 200 kilometres east of Perth, out in the wheat belt. And I just fell in love with it. I just went, this is my jam. I love this. Sick. It's awesome. I thought it was the best thing ever, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, that I could do this. I found it to be a really empowering thing. And then I got the money together to pay for lessons and started doing it regularly from April the following year.
Now, most people would understand that flying is like horse riding and sailing. Insanely expensive to have as a hobby.
Yeah.
So I think they're the three things that weld those disparate activities together.
This is true.
So how long has it taken you to be able to turn flying around Australia into a reality? Because it must have involved piles of extra money apart from just living, but the planning aspect of it must have been huge. And then, of course, the C word intervened. And you're a very clumsy person by the look of it, because I've seen so many pictures of you with plaster that also put a bit of a stop on it. So you're learning how to fly in 2015. You decide this is amazing. let's go through the timeline. What happened next?
Yeah, okay. So it's interesting that you bring up the finances because I've been very fortunate to do several things that have allowed me to do this. And I think it's one of those things when stuff's supposed to happen, it's things fall into place to help you achieve it. And when I didn't actually start learning to fly until like a year later after I had that idea, because I just moved to Perth after a marriage breakup. I'd started a new job. I didn't even own a car at the time, let alone enough money to start paying for flying. So, I had to get myself together that way and get a car and things like that. And then I applied for a flying scholarship. I got an Amelia Earhart Fly Now scholarship through the 99's International Organization of Women Pilots, and that was worth $6,000 US, and that covered my flight lessons as well as my passenger and cross-country endorsements. So it took me about a year to go solo and get my pilot certificate. So I got that in 2017 and the endorsements by the end of 2017. And then I moved over to Lake Macquarie hey, Costa, how you doing?
Isn't that what, Costa, we were just talking about you before we pressed the live button. Good on you.
So I moved over to Newcastle to work with the guys who make the aircraft, Airborne Australia, and they ended up sponsoring me and allowed me to. So I moved over. I sold all my stuff in Perth, and so everything I own now just fits in my car. And I moved over to Lake Macquarie, and I worked for 6 months in the Airborne factory helping to assemble and service microlights, and those guys let me fly their aircraft for free for 6 months while I built up my flying hours. And during that time, I managed to get the money together from sponsorship, and I also ran a crowdfunding campaign in 2017 that raised $18,000. Peel Harvey Catchment Council sponsored me. An anonymous donor gave me a large sum of money, and Dick Smith chipped some in as well. And it was enough for me to get my own microlight aircraft, which I was able to help build myself with the guys at Airborne, and they let me use my hours working in the factory as credit towards the plane, and they did the plane for me at cost as well. So that was massive, like to have all of those opportunities. And the other way I've saved money to get me flying is by house sitting. So when I moved over to Newcastle, I started house sitting. So I haven't paid rent for 4 years because I've been house sitting. But I also had the guys at Airborne. One of the guys there, Phil, had a caravan. So when I was in between house sits, I'd live in the caravan in the car park outside the factory. So I really have just, what do you call it, just bootlegged. I've bootlegged the project. I've done whatever I could to not pay rent so that I can pay for flying lessons. That's been my priority.
Well, you're obviously very, very adaptable. You're obviously a good networker, Milly.
Yeah.
Look, off the topic totally, but what's it like being like a permanent house sitter?
Yeah. I've been so fortunate. I've made a lot of friends. The place I'm staying in now that I'm live streaming to you from is a house sit that I've spent most of my time in, and the owners here spend half of their time over in Turkey. And I was so fortunate during the pandemic. They actually got stuck in Turkey during the pandemic, so I was living here for 10 months. So I'm here for months at a time. And what's it like house sitting? You make a lot of friends. You get used to uncertainty, and you have a lot of plan Bs. So my plan Bs were like, if I didn't have a house sit, I could always go and stay at the airport in the pilot's quarters because I was friends with the guys in the terminal who work for Skydive Australia and stuff and Airborne, or I could just swag it if I really got stuck. I've only had to stay at a hostel once, but you make friends. They let you crash on their couch. It's you get by. Yeah.
You have to be adaptable, don't you?
You have to be adaptable.
Tell me about the process of crowdfunding for such a large undertaking, and the process of producing the book. I mean, CSIRO have committed to produce the book. So tell us about the skills that you have to bring on board after being a textile artist and then a zoologist. You're bringing so many different life skills together to then be an artist and a financier. An author and a financier. So how did the process of agreeing to the contract, because they've sought you out, that was fortuitous. But all the sort of business stuff, and then crowdfunding, getting the money, taxation implications, all that kind of stuff that I think scientists and conservationists are going to have to investigate a bit more often, as regular sources of funding are harder to get. What have you learned? What did you do? Tell us how that all happened.
Well, just make it up as you go along. Ask lots of questions. That's pretty much been my way to go. I spend a lot of time asking people who've done it before what they did. And especially with the first crowdfunding campaign I ran in 2017, I was trying to get together $70,000 for a Microlight, and we only got $18,500. But when I think about it, like, that was such a massive achievement, because I didn't even have my pilot license by that point then. I was just saying, I'm going to fly to Siberia. I'm not even a qualified pilot yet. I mean, for people to invest in that idea before I've even got the skills was pretty massive. So I think that speaks a lot to the idea. But before I ran the campaign, I spoke to a lot of people like you and Recce, who had success with crowdfunding, and Matt Heron with the Bittens in Rice project, and others who've done it before, and they gave me a lot of tips. So that was fantastic. And I worked with the team from Remember the Wild. So a lot of the people from Remember the Wild, we did our masters together at Melbourne Uni in zoology. So having them on board really helped me to do all the media and social media, and just running the campaign and learning as you go what you've got to do to get yourself out there has really informed this current campaign that I'm running now. And I think I've been a lot more prepared, and a lot more. I've got a lot more connections in my network nowadays than what I did back then as well.
I'll just editorialise for a minute, because I haven't met Catherine from Remember the Wild or Ewan. I haven't met Ewan, but their public presence on social media seems to be incredibly supportive of everyone else that's working in the field. And that's one of the great delights of doing a show like this, is that it's not competitive, it's really supportive, and the outcomes are what everybody is concerned about. So it's really good that they've helped you step along. But the crowdfunding, how did you just sort of decide one day, oh, well, I'll crowdfund it, and then you went online and thought crowdfunding platforms and looked for a platform? Because I'm sure a lot of people...
Oh, you've frozen there, Grant. Is that me or you?
Oh, we're back.
You're back? Sorry.
I think something happened at my internet end. Did you hear that question?
You were asking about how I chose the platform. Is that right?
Yeah. Did you just wake up one morning and go, yeah, crowdfunding, that's what I'm going to do, and then you just went online and went, right, crowdfunding, is it GoFundMe? I've heard about that. I've heard about Kickstarter. How did that all come about?
Yeah, so I was working at UWA at the time, and I'd seen several other conservation projects have success with crowdfunding, and I thought that was going to be my best option to get money in. I also applied for many, many grants and things like that, and I've had success with some and not with others. But grant writing is not my forte, and it's very, very hard and very, very competitive. And so I thought crowdfunding was probably the better way to, because this is written for 800 crowdfunds. Yeah, pretty much. But I was working at UWA, and they were using Chuffed as their crowdfunding platform. So they offered to host my crowdfunding campaign, so I could offer tax deductible donations. So because I was an employee there, they helped me out. And because I'd used Chuff before, I was familiar with it. I went with it again this time. So
yeah, that's an issue for anyone who's raising money, crowdfunding,
absolutely.
or as I'm dabbling with the bird nerd trivia. That money, there's no tax paid on it, and just because someone's donating to a good cause, it doesn't mean that it's tax-free or anything like that. So seek some advice, I would say.
Oh, no, I have done that. I've spoken to, accountants and done all my research there as well, because absolutely you don't want someone to come along and say, oh, actually, you're going to take half of that.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Now, the difference between an ultralight and a microlight. Tell me what's special about what you'll be flying.
All right. So a microlight is a powered hang glider. It's a 2-axis aircraft. So most people are familiar with 3-axis aircraft. So you've got can I get my hand here? 3 axes. You've got pitch, which is up and down. You've got roll, which is side to side, and then you've got yaw, which is twist. And microlights, you don't have rudder pedals, so you can't control that twisting yaw action in the aircraft, whereas all other 3-axis aircraft do. So in the microlight, you are not using a stick and rudder to control. You are actually holding onto a triangular control frame that's attached to the wing above you, and it's called a weight shift aircraft. So to turn the aircraft, you actually have to physically push the control bar left and right or forward and back to change pitch and roll. And the controls are actually opposite to a 3-axis aircraft. So if you want to go faster, you pull the bar in, and that will bring the aircraft nose down. So you pulling on airspeed, you go quicker, and you'll also start to descend if you don't have enough power on. And to go slower, you push the bar out, and that'll bring the nose up and slow it down. So the opposite controls to the 3-axis.
Do you graduate from one to another? Like, do you step through, or have you started in pretty much in the same kind of aerobatic machine that you have built yourself?
Okay. I started in microlights, and not everybody learns to fly both. I've learned to fly both because I wanted to get a controlled airspace endorsement, and so I can fly in controlled airspace, because there's 2 streams of aviation in Australia. There's recreational aviation, and then there's general aviation. And you can't fly in controlled airspace in the recreational aviation stream. You need to have a GA pilot license. So there's a recreational pilot certificate in RA and a recreational pilot license in GA. It's very confusing and annoying because it's CASA. So I had to go and learn to fly a 3-axis aircraft and get a recreational pilot license, or an RPL, so I could then go and get a controlled airspace endorsement. And once you have that controlled airspace endorsement, you can use it in any aircraft you want to, including a microlight. You just can't go and get one and do the training in a microlight.
Okay, so to decode that, you had to learn how to fly to get a general aviation airline license in, for instance, a Cessna.
Yeah, so then Cessna 150.
Yeah. So you had to learn how to fly the typical light plane in, and GA means that you can go and use an airport like Essendon or Mordialloc or something like that, whereas a recreational one means you have to go to the cliff. Right, but you can't go into busy airspace. You can only
go like you have controlled and uncontrolled aerodromes. So controlled aerodromes have air traffic control, and they're classified into 2 groups. So you have Class D and Class C airspace. So Class C is the really big ones like Melbourne and Sydney and Canberra, and then you've got Class D, which are the smaller ones like Essendon and Avalon and that. So you have to have controlled airspace if there's air traffic control. But at uncontrolled aerodromes, air traffic control might not be there. It is still hella busy. And you've got to rely on talking to all the other pilots, and the pilots doing correct radio calls and communicating with one another so that, you all know what you're doing. So, yeah, it doesn't mean you landed on the cliff.
Well, but bird nerds, I never expected that you'd be hearing that on the bird emergency.
Yeah, giving you aviation.
Milly, how hard was it, or is it, to have planned out all of the visits that you're going to make at schools, and I'm guessing that you're going to be doing community events and whatnot along the way, and following on from that, can the general public turn up, or do they have to be school kids?
Oh well, I'll start with the planning bit first. So the Microlight, I planned it based on, the Microlight's capabilities as an aircraft, I guess. So it's got an endurance of about 5 hours. And so most of the flights that I'm doing are between 100 and 300 nautical miles. So 1 to 3 hours of flying at a time. And I'm trying to maximize stopping at as many places as I possibly can on the way. So there's 90 stops around the country. I can only do a rough plan at this stage of where I'm going to stop over, because you can't do all the nitty-gritty planning without all of your, your forecasts and stuff like that. So, yeah, it'll just be as I go. You have to plan all that stuff much closer to the date. So it's a rough plan. With the schools and library stuff, I'll be setting up an application on my website for schools at the end of the crowdfunding campaign once I'm sure I've got all the money, so schools can apply if they want me to come to their school and do a visit. And we're planning to do like a reading of the book and an activity, book-related activity to do with shorebirds as well. I was actually thinking about possibly getting the kids to make their own fold-up books. There's online activity. They came up with it in COVID, where they were getting kids to make these fold-up books. And John Wolseley did one too. There's a YouTube video of him making one, and they're all about nature and stuff. So I was thinking of doing something like that, but with shorebirds. Yeah.
How many schools are you hoping to visit in the 20,000 coast? So obviously they're going to be schools around the coast.
Yeah.
So have you got an idea in mind of how many you'll be popping in to see?
Yeah, well, I think if I'm at a stopover for maybe three days or whatever, I think it's realistic to visit 1 or 2 schools in a day without wiping myself out, and giving enough time for planning and all of that. So hopefully, we can visit maybe 2, 3, 4 schools at each stopover, if not a few more.
So you mentioned about 5 hours is the flying time. The what do you call it? Uptime? Is there a groovy endurance?
Endurance.
Okay, so about 5 hours endurance. I'm guessing that's on a fair weather flying day. How far do you cover in about 5 hours?
Yeah, so it really depends on the wind. So the aircraft burns about 10 litres of fuel an hour in that 5 hours. And if my aircraft does about 55, 60 knots, so an average of about 100 k's an hour. So if I've got a headwind, I will not be doing quite that fast. So I won't get as far. But if I've got a tailwind, I'll be going a bit faster. So it really depends. But I'd say on average about 400 to 500 k's off a full tank of fuel.
And which way are you going? You're starting off in Broome. So are you heading to Perth, or are you heading to Darwin in the first instance?
Yeah, I'll be going anti-clockwise around the country, and that's because the prevailing winds will be in my favour that way.
So after a week, where do you expect to be after leaving Broome?
I can't tell you, because it will all depend on the weather. Yeah.
And look, every true adventurer has to have a ground crew, getting your dinner ready and taking takeoff and landing shots, or recovering you from, I don't know, a mangrove infested crocodile filled location. That'll all make for good TV, Milly, down the track. Who's in your ground crew? How many people? What's the Wing Threads operation in terms of personnel?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I've got a few friends who put their hands up for ground crew so far. So my friends Jamie and Base, they've done their own sailing adventure down the west coast of Australia years ago called the Salty Voyage, and they were collecting water samples to measure plastic pollution in the Indian Ocean over there, which is incredible. So they'll be joining me for part of it. I've also got a fellow pilot, his name's Trevor, who'll be joining me for part of it as well. And another guy, Robin, he's a paragliding pilot, and his wife want to join me for part of it. So I'm really relying on volunteers. I was hoping Remember the Wild could join me because we want to do a documentary film about the adventure, but they're not in a position to be able to do that anymore, unfortunately, because so we're hoping we get the funding together and then they can get somebody to come along with me, because that was the original plan, having a member of Remember the Wild join me on the ground crew. But yeah, if people out there would like to come and join me for an adventure or part of, and you want to be on a ground crew, hit me up.
And let's put it out there. Hey, GoPro or DJI or anyone else, I'm sure Milly could do with a few extra cameras to get some great airborne shots, and maybe say, it's not too late to contribute. Now that the crowdfunding kicked off this week, Milly. So how are you watching it hour by hour?
Am I watching it? It's hard not to check it every 5 minutes. Yesterday morning we hit 25% of our target in 4 days, so that was insane.
So what's the target?
The target is $75,000, and we got to 18,750 yesterday morning, and as of last night, we hit 20,000, and I think we're up to about 21 this morning. So that just keeps ticking along, which is incredible, and in large part because of the wonderful Costa, who's joining us at the moment. Costa and I did a live stream on Monday night on the launch day of the campaign, and we talked about shorebirds and wing threads flight around Oz, and I invited Costa to come flying with me, which was pretty incredible, and he said yes, so that was amazing. And we did that flight together yesterday morning, and we live streamed it to Facebook Live, and I took Costa for a fly out over the Hunter wetlands here around Newcastle and down the coast, and we had a wonderful chat about shorebirds and all the work bird life is doing, and showed Costa the sights, and it was just awesome. We've had such a good response.
Well, it's good. Good on you, Costa. You're in the peanut gallery today, so that's great. He's still buzzing, he says. For people who are just listening, Costa's in the comments, which is terrific. And one of my favourite friends of the show, there's Claire Greenwell, has just commented. Such an inspiring story, Milly. It's great to see so much community support behind this exciting project. It's definitely a win for the birds. Too right, Claire. Absolutely it is. Claire's done her own inspiring journey recently too. But you've got a donate button on Wing Threads. So I encourage you to click that. That will take you to chuffed.org, and you'll find Milly there, /project/ a shorebird flying adventure. So I'm sure on Chuffed, if you were to search shorebird flying adventure, you would easily find Milly. Please donate. 20,950 is. I've just had a look. So there is 27 days still to go. I'm pretty confident you'll reach that target, Milly. I think that
we actually had a fundraiser last night that raised $2,000. So that hasn't gone in there yet. So we're very close to getting to 30%. I think we'll be almost a third of the way there by the end of the week, I hope. That would be amazing.
Well, we might talk about this off air, but the whole idea of bird nerd trivia is to raise awareness and money for sort of small projects. So we might talk about whether we can do something with that too. That kind of makes it easy to get people from other parts of the world to get to know what's going on.
Awesome.
Here we are. We've got some more comments, which for audio listeners, you're going to have to bear with us. If you don't know who Costa is the host of Gardening Australia, which is the premier, longest-running gardening program in Australia, produced on our national broadcaster, the ABC. And Costa is big into community involvement. Milly, I'm surprised that you didn't try and land on his nature strip. That would have been good TV. But yeah, Costa's into sharing his community. Now, look, we're getting the comments coming in, which is what we like. Do you want to read that one out, Milly?
Oh, it's Annie. Hi, Annie. Thank you for joining us. Annie joined us yesterday too for the live stream. Hi, Milly and Grant. I love your dedication, Milly. School children and adults alike are so privileged to have you as our role model. The flight with Costa was so exciting and fun. Thank you, Annie.
Sorry for giggling. I saw this one before you did, I think. A Verge adventure with Milly. Yes, quite good on you, Costa. Look, there's quite a few people watching along. So if you've got a question, I guess it's a good opportunity to get one in there for Milly. Milly, you're a country kid. You grew up in Druin, in Gippsland, in Victoria.
Yeah.
I want to know how you got from artistry to zoology. Can you take us through that?
Yeah, sure. Well, as a kid, I always loved animals, and I can remember asking my sister when I was 7, what do you call someone who studies animals? And she said a zoologist. And I was like, well, I want to be a zoologist when I grow up. And I loved drawing as well as a kid. And the only thing I ever wanted to draw was animals. I only liked drawing animals. So I guess the two things were always there from a young age. But I got into science later. I got into the art stuff first. I wanted to be an animator when I was in high school, and I did animation, and then I started doing an illustration course at TAFE, and then I did the Bachelor of Visual Arts and majored in tapestry, as I mentioned before. But when I was working as a tapestry weaver, I actually got a repetitive strain injury in my shoulder, and I went, oh, well, I can't do this forever. And the only other thing I ever wanted to do was work with animals. So I went, oh, well, I'll go back to uni and study zoology and follow that career. So I guess the two came together in that way. And I think, like, a lot of people say to me, like, art and science, they're so far apart, like they're opposite ends of the spectrum. But for me, they're not. They're actually essential. Like, you need to employ those creative narrative skills and visual skills to be able to communicate what the science says to the general public. So they're absolutely married together for me.
That's a really interesting point. I felt that way when I got into horticulture. I never thought I had an artistic bone in my body, but horticulture, plant selection, expressing ideas in garden design, and understanding texture and form is absolutely the basis of being a good horticulturist. So,
yes. And I think as well, on that note, I love that. It's like art and drawing teaches you to be observant. Like, you cannot create a drawing without being observant, and a large part of being a good scientist is being observant as well. So I think that's a really key skill as well that falls into those areas.
You were just mentioning that you did some illustration, some training in illustration.
Yes.
Do you ever did you ever think of doing a visual book where you would be the author and the illustrator?
No. No, I didn't. Yeah, I of course not, especially not with myself as the main character. Isn't that weird? It was very weird drawing Microlight Milly as a character. I actually wanted to be Microlight Milly and not just Milly in the book, because it felt like, the character calling her Microlight Milly gave me a little bit of separation.
You're able to step back just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
You're able to put 4 meters of aluminium between you and the public.
Yeah, something like that. It was such a trip, but it's been an amazing experience. I'm still spinning out about all of it, really. Yeah, it's crazy.
There's been a couple of reasons that you've had to delay the project at a couple of times. So obviously COVID, but tell us about the plastic casts. What? Yeah, I can't let you walk away from that one, Milly.
Thanks. I don't think anyone's ever going to let me walk away from that ever. So in 2018, I finally got my Microlight, and I was like, yes, this is it. The project's happening. And I went, oh, well, now I've got my plane. I should really get some flying experience in different parts of the country. So I thought I'd do a Recce Trip. And the wonderful thing about the Microlight is that you can take the wing off the base and fold it up, because it is a hang glider wing, so you can fold it up to the hang glider wing and put it on the roof racks of your car, and the trike base goes in the trailer. So I was going to tow it around the country, set it up at different airfields, go for a fly. It was going to be amazing and raise money on the way and all the rest of it. Anyway, we left Lake Macquarie in August and got to Caboolture Airfield 3 days later, and I was setting up the Microlight for the first time with my mate Neil Schaefer he's actually another trike pilot who's at Recreational Aviation Australia. And we just set the Microlight up to go flying, and I went to put the trailer back on the back of the car, and the jockey wheel wasn't latched into place, and it collapsed, and the hitch of the trailer fell on my left leg and cracked my tibia. So I broke my leg 3 days into the Recce Trip, so I did 0 flying. But we decided to keep going because this is me and my mate Phil who came with me. We decided to keep travelling around the country because the Broome Bird Observatory Congress and Campout was happening that year, and we had a fundraiser on there. So I got there and we did the fundraiser, which turned out to be a massive flop.
Just before you go on, why do you think that was? Because everybody knows about, or everyone in bird world in Australia knows about the Broome Observatory. Yeah. Why do you think that was a flop?
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe it just wasn't the right time. A friend had organised for me to give a talk at the Mangrove Hotel that night, and had organised drinks and stuff. But that evening was also another huge football event in Broome, I think it was, or some big community event. So people out in the community were all going to that already. So I think it was a timing thing. So a lot of people didn't come along and buy a ticket. We ended up breaking even. So I shouldn't say it was the biggest flop, but we broke even in terms of money. So it was a bit disappointing, but it just wasn't the right timing, So we kept going on and got to Perth, and my mate Phil is from Perth, so we stayed at his place for a while, and I was recovering from my broken leg there. And while I was at his place, I slipped in the bathroom getting my crutches, and I broke my right wrist as well. Like you see, I've got a scar. There you go. Lovely.
Yeah, and when one thing happens, something else happens. It's always the way, isn't it? So, Are you fully healed now? Is everything's fine? Can you run around the block now? Are you out doing bird a minute?
Oh, I haven't been doing bird media. I've been a bit absorbed by other things, but I do know of that. Yeah, Jeremy invited me to that bird minute page. Looks
Yeah.
intense.
I just want to. I just have to go back to the book for a minute,
Mhm.
Milly. Jacky Karen, how did your collaboration with Jacky Karen come about? Jacky is, of course, the author of the book. That was the point of asking Milly about being the author and the illustrator.
Yeah. So Jacky, I met Jacky at the Australasian Shorebird Conference in Hobart at the end of 2018. And she's a good friend of Kate Gorringe-Smith, who I'm sure many of you know from the Overwintering Project, and the Flyway Print Exchange, which are both massive shorebird print exhibitions that she's collaborated with artists all throughout the Flyway to bring those together and raise money for BirdLife's Migratory Shorebird program. Kate's pretty amazing. So Kate's a friend of mine, and she introduced me to Jacky. And Jacky even said to me at that conference, she said, we should do a book together someday. And then, 7 months later, I'm like, Jacky, I've got off with this book deal. You want to work with me? And she was like, hell yeah. So that's how that one came about.
That's great. So you didn't need to do any of the hard work with CSIRO with pulling the whole project together.
No.
Yeah.
This one fell in my lap. It's one of those serendipitous things that happened. Yeah. That I did not foresee.
So we have to do the plug. Buy the book. How many illustrations have you done for it, Milly? Like, how much time, apart from flying and learning how to fly, maintaining your aircraft, doing all of your publicity and whatnot? How much time has it taken you to actually do all the illustrations?
Yeah, it took ages. So from getting the book deal in 2019, it was I started doing the illustrations at the end of 2020. So it took that long to get the contract sorted, to get the script to a point where it was signed off on, because this is my first foray into children's books. So I was learning as I went along. And all the stages. So, yeah, you have to write the book. They have to approve it. You have to have an editor go all over it all, sign off on it all before they'll let you start doing illustrations. You have to prepare storyboards. So, there's a big thunderstorm happening here. So I started the illustrations in December of 2020, and I finished them in December of 2021. So, about a year.
That's it's a lot of dedication, a lot of planning, a lot of time involved in getting something done.
Yeah.
What do you want the ongoing legacy of the flight, of actually completing the flight? Because you will complete it. It's going to be a massive success, and the crowdfunding is going to go off. But what do you hope will perhaps be, what will people be saying about wing threads in 5 years' time?
Oh, wow, that's a really big question, isn't it? I would love to see birds like Bartail Godwit and Eastern Curlew and redneck stint to be like well-known names as flagship species, like, blue whale and orangutan and the panda, and deemed as worthy of protection. And for people to have an understanding of our wetlands and the importance of those wetlands, not just for birds, but for us as well as people, because these wetlands provide us with important ecosystem services like clean water and livelihoods and food. They provide buffers against storms and help store carbon for climate change, all of these massive things. And I think people often look at wetlands like swamps and stuff like that as boggy, ugly mudflats or whatever, and they don't see the value in it or the importance of it. And they're often the first place that houses are built on and that sort of thing, because they're not seen as like there's anything there. So I would love people to engage with the birds and the wetlands that they inhabit, and see their own connection as part of a larger global ecological network. Because I really think that I would say to people, shorebirds are my greatest teachers, because their migration path links over 4.5 billion people across 23 countries and 3 continents in our East Asian Australasian flyway. And that path is like a chain with links in it, they're stopping at each of those wetlands along the way. And if one of those links fails, they can't complete that migration path. So understanding our local wetlands within that global context, I think really helps us to put us back in the space of nature, to see ourselves as part of nature and not separate to it. Because I think people often see ourselves as separate to it these days, and therefore not having an impact on it. So I would really love to see that reconnection with nature. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you something as a follow-on to that, but first, It wouldn't be the bird emergency if I didn't inject some kind of vaguely provocative, politically, and perhaps stupid commentary. But
sure.
Today, I got up this morning and our defence minister said something about China and linking China with our opposition leader and whatnot. And I watched a whole lot of commentary on the different channels flicking around this morning. China, 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 China. Not once did anyone note that China and Australia are connected by this incredibly important ecological system, this movement of organisms up and down. Not one person made any kind of connection to anything about how intrinsically connected Australia, China, Japan, the Southeast Asian nations, and Australia are. And I'm always frustrated about that. That's one of the reasons I do this, why I sit here every day and talk to amazing people like you who are working in this field. Well, when on a day when the koala is listed now as endangered, why isn't anybody in media running a regular segment talking to you, talking to Tegan, talking to Claire, talking about nature? I mean, we all know who bloody Lizzo is divorcing or dating or whatever stupid pop star rubbish, movie star rubbish. Why haven't we found space in our public discourse for our own amazing, unique nature? There we go. Do you think we're doing it? Do you think we're doing any better? Like in 10 years, do you think we're actually doing any better? Because there seems to be a whole lot of publicity in certain corners about projects, but we're not really doing any better on a whole, are we?
This is a really interesting question.
I'm glad, because it was a bloody long one.
That's all right. I might have a bloody long answer for you. Yeah, you've actually just tapped into my interest in conservation psychology. So I'm really fascinated by how we actually frame environmental messaging. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Cartman drama triangle. Do you know about this?
No, learn me, Amelia.
All right. So the Cartman drama triangle is a framework that describes dysfunctional conflict dynamics. And a lot of, the media uses it a lot, and so does a lot of our conservation messaging. And it's based on a triangle framework, as you can imagine, where what you do is what we do in conservation messaging a lot, for example, is we frame something as a victim. So it could be a threatened species. Often threatened species are framed as a victim. And then you have a perpetrator who's doing something wrong, and they're responsible or at fault for causing the threatened species to become extinct. So it could be industry or mining or whatever. And then that campaign uses that dynamic to ask the audience to come and rescue that species, often by donating money or something like that. And the problem is it works in the short term in terms of getting donations, but what the dynamic also sets up is a disempowerment framework. So what happens, and we unintentionally disempower ourselves. So what we do is when we say that thing over there that is causing this problem that is completely out of my control, that needs to change if things are going to get better, then what you do is you undermine your own agency and you start to feel powerless and like you can't do anything. And when you repeat that message over and over again because you want people to keep donating, what people start to hear is, well, you have to keep painting a picture of things not getting better in order for that to keep working, that dynamic. So when you keep repeating that message over and over, people start to go, oh, it doesn't matter what I do, nothing ever seems to get any better. And you get this picture that everything's just going to shit and it doesn't matter what we do. And I think what we've done over time is unintentionally created an unhealthy imbalance towards showing what's wrong instead of also showing the things that are working and the things that are going right. So when Jacky and I wrote A Shorebird Flying Adventure, I deliberately chose to move away from this drama triangle framework. And there's lots of rescuing language that is used in environmental messaging, like let's save shorebirds, let's fight for them, let's get angry. And if we get angry and invite other people to get on the angry bandwagon as well, and get angry at people who are responsible for this. And it's a punitive system as well. We use shame and blame to punish the perpetrator.
And I'm guilty of that.
Everybody is.
I've got to be honest with it. It's really easy to locate a villain.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yes, it's really easy. So easy. And Jacky and I, when we wrote The Shorebird Flying Adventure, we didn't want to use any of that rescue language. It was so hard. Because I'm so used to using that framework in environmental messaging that to create something different was really, really challenging, and we struggled with the script for a long time. So the opposite of the drama triangle is called the empowerment dynamic. So what you do with that one instead is that you frame an issue like threatened species extinction as a challenge. Excuse me. And then you have a coach or a guide as well instead of a rescuer. And that could be a scientific organization or a researcher, or for myself in the book, it's Microlight Milly, and they have the knowledge and the data and the scientific know-how to give the creator the information they need to come up with a vision and look at what we can do to find solutions to tackle the challenge. So what that does is it gives the audience back their agency and the power to start thinking creatively, or the space to start thinking creatively. There's nothing like shame and blame and punishment to squash creativity, and that's what the drama triangle does. So it's in the book at the end, what we do, instead of saying, don't drive on the beach and pick up your rubbish and, don't spook the shorebirds, we actually say, imagine a world where our wetlands are protected and restored. Imagine a world where shorebirds get to roost and feed in peace. So inviting people to start thinking about what we do want instead of what we don't want, because that's another thing. I think if you walked into a room of people and said, who here has a dystopian vision of the future where everything goes to hell and humans have wrecked the planet and we all die? I think everybody would put their hand up, right? And then if I said, who in this room has a vision of the future where we manage to get it together and work things out, and it's rocky for a while, but we largely solve the climate problem and get ourselves back on track, and eventually it turns out okay. I mean, how many people would put their hand up for that? I think very few.
That's the thing. That's the thing that I dream about. It's like I've got the comfortable pillow and I've got the hard pillow, and I never know which one I want to have on top. what
This is an interesting one, because I think you can't get to that place without having at least starting to create a vision about it and talking about it. And it's not about sticking our head in the sand and pretending that bad things aren't happening. It's creating space for both things to exist at the same time, I think. Yeah.
I'll tell you, because you can't stop me, about what frustrates me, Milly, is, I'm like everyone else. You get up and you make your cuppa and you get your breakfast together and you put on the TV, and that's either, News Breakfast or Koshi and Nat or whoever the bozos, the same but different bozos are on Channel 9. And they're always doing these meaningless stories about, which suburbs will perform best in the property market in blah, 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 blah. And bloody, bloody, blah released a report saying interest rates will probably do the same thing they did for 100 years. And, here's this new amazing weight loss thing, or here's this new miracle treatment for cancer. And they get 5 minutes of time in every news bulletin, in every magazine program on TV, and then they sink without a trace. Mm-hmm. Maybe 15 years or so, a patent is actually granted and you can actually go and buy that miracle thing. But I've only been doing this a short time, and nearly everybody that I interview is an amazing communicator with a body of work that gives them credibility, a personality that enables them to communicate. And you and I'm encompassing all of you, are not on these. You can wheel in a snake or a cuddly chick or a possum or something every day on these shows and tell a different story and give a different message. But is it just that the money is not backing it, that somebody then can't say to the network, but we'll spend $300,000 in spots in primetime over the next 3 months if you bring on, conservation person like the finance industry does? We'll make 100 hours of content for you as long as you interview our expert every month, 2 months, or whatever. Do you think am I on the right track there? And if I am, how can we possibly combat that? Even though I don't want to use negative messaging, how can we counter that? How can we put the positive messages and put the heroes of conservation and research in front of people, because people are going to like you when they meet you? That's my frustrating thing. See, you're all really, really good at what you do, but you're really great communicators and nobody is meeting you. It's only nerds like me that are meeting you,
Yeah. I'm not sure there's a question that you're asking.
Okay.
That we should incentivize networks to put people on the television. Is that
and does it frustrate you that the whole architecture, I guess, the conservation architecture, the money architecture, doesn't allow to combat or compete with because no matter which way you slice it and dice it, the finance industry is not going to be conservation minded unless we change our property and development market. Our sort of well-being messaging is always about building more, doing more. Yeah. That doesn't really line up with the stuff, which in turn means that we have to press the panic button to save everything. And it's not about retention. It's about surviving at the last minute, which is why I had to call the thing the bird emergency. If I called it conservation success stories, no one would listen. They'd go, "Oh yeah."
Well, I think that's a point in itself. Like, why can't you have conservation success stories in there as well? I think that the two are key.
Well, that's what I do. I talk about conservation success stories, but if I just put success stories in a list of endless podcasts. That's the last thing people click on. We're all conditioned to it. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, we're all conditioned to it. I would agree. And that's really the conversation that I want to start with people, is how do we start to turn that around? Because I think that it works in the short term, but in the long term, what we end up with is burnout and then disempowerment. It's a disempowerment dynamic that is not sustainable. And
I would hope that you're let's put a challenge. Let's challenge mainstream media like they give a shit.
I don't know, because
wouldn't it be great that everywhere you land, all the towns, that the local news crew and all the commercial local news crews are begging for government money, because it's not fair that the ABC have got local reporters and we don't. But shouldn't the ABC and the local news people be turning up, interviewing you, wanting to get you into the studio to do an interview with you? That's the world I want to see, Milly. That
would be awesome.
Yeah,
it would be really awesome. I'm probably the least political person that you would have on your show, Grant.
Yeah, well, that's why. Look, nobody else needs to be political. I'm doing more than enough of that myself. So, sorry if you're enduring it too, by the way.
No, it's okay. I find it quite fascinating. I deliberately, I engage with it as little as possible because it brings me down, and I find it leads me into that space where I am getting resentful and depressed and upset, and I can't operate on the level that I want to be at if I'm in that space. And I think for myself, I've learned you can't change other people. You can only change yourself and be an example of what you would like to see out there. And I focus on that and the people that want to engage with that. And the people who, I could be banging my head on a wall trying to get someone to be into what I do and think how I think forever, or I could go and engage with the people over here who get it and connect with it and start to grow that community and work with them, and let the people who aren't with us go about their business and let us grow our thing and focus on that. That's sort of where I direct my energy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I'll take on all the negative stuff for you, Milly, so you don't need to. I totally appreciate that that mindset, that standpoint, because it's so frustrating.
It's very frustrating.
But I feel like I have to be the person who runs over and bashes into that group standing over there who don't think the way that you do, because once in a while one of them might wake up and go, hey, that looks like a pretty good party, and then they might come over to this side. That's sort of the best we can hope for in a way. It's just really frustrating, because I think people really do care about about the plight of the koala and the numbat and the golden-shouldered parrot and the countless others. But I don't think they get the messaging about what they can do to change it. And like you said it up perfectly. Everyone's been conditioned into having mortal combat over conservation, chaining yourselves to bulldozers, blockading, all that stuff, which has its point, has its place, and it's the only way that's been effective, because we are not able to work like little termites from the inside, where we're getting into the structures where the money and the profit is to facilitate change. So that's why I call you guys heroes and warriors and whatnot, because I think you must be stronger than me, Milly, in terms of always seeing it at work, always, But look, That's enough of me doing that. Let's talk about the your job at BirdLife.
Sure.
What is the Shorebirds program specifically, and maybe explain a little bit about how the different project officers and everything at BirdLife run their race.
Okay. So the Migratory Shorebird program in BirdLife has two major components. The first one is a citizen science program, which is we rely on volunteers all around Australia to do shorebird population monitoring for us, and we have a biannual count. So we get our volunteers to go out twice a year, once in summer and once in winter, to count waders all around the country. And those data help us keep track of shorebird populations throughout Australia every year. And the second component is working with community groups around the country starting to do site action planning. So myself and Marta Ferenzi, who's another shorebird officer at BirdLife, we've done I can't remember the number now. I think it's 18. I've done 3 here in the Hunter and Port Stephens and Manning River, and Marta's done several in South Australia and Victoria now. So they're as part of the Migratory Shorebird Conservation Action Plan that Dan Weller helped put together years ago with Connie Lee. They identified all the important shorebird sites around Australia and helped put together the National Directory of Important Shorebird Habitat as well. It's another important document that finally got published last year and you can download on the BirdLife website. So we're targeting those areas to develop these site action plans and come up with a list of actions that it's sort of like a wish list of all the things, like if we could do absolutely everything in this area for shorebirds, what would it look like? So getting all the local land managers and councils and parks and wildlife, all of those groups together to discuss and come up with this list of actions, and then putting that together into a working document that they can then have a look at and prioritise which actions can be done first and what's most feasible. And part of my job has been to create a working group here in the Hunter Valley of people from all of those different organisations and chair meetings so that we can start to implement actions from those site action plans. So I'm hoping to expand on that site action planning process with different organisations around the country to achieve overall objectives in the MS CAP.
This might be a hard one, Milly.
All right.
Who's your conservation hero?
Oh, who's my conservation hero? That is a hard one, isn't it? I really love Jane Goodall. I think she's incredible, and I love that she brings the heart and the science together, and that's something very important to me. You can have all the facts, and you don't have the heart. It's very hard to communicate it and connect with other people and connect other people with what you do. She's a big one for me.
Well, that was my soft lead in. That was my soft lead into the to the hard hitting bird emergency questions for you, Milly.
Oh no!
So, are you ready? You better strap in. Check your altimeter.
Oh, no,
make sure everything's fine.
I'm scared, Grant.
Okay. Well, this is the one that sorts out the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah.
What is your field guide of choice?
Ooh, okay. Well, I'd say the one I use the most is the Pisian Night app on my phone. For birds. But I like to refer to the CSIRO Australian Field Guide too. But yeah, probably Pisian Night on my phone is my go-to.
That's a good lead into the next question. When you're out doing field work, what's your essential piece of kit or equipment? I mean, what if I said to you, Milly, we're going bird watching, but you can only bring one thing?
Yeah. Oh, I just take my binos.
Good.
The shot eye.
And are you with the new little compact ones, or if you got a big old clunker?
No, I just got the Nikon Monarchs. Yeah,
Okay,
10 by
Nikon
42s.
Monarchs.
Yeah.
Hello, Nikon. You know, there's a sponsorship opportunity going here, Nikon. I don't see your name on the Wing Threads page.
Well, Swarovski.
That's right. I'm just saying, or even Zeiss, don't leave them out.
Leica.
That's right. There is a sponsorship opportunity for bird watching. Actually, that begs the question I have to ask: when you're up in the air, like we see the fantasy movies about the flying with the geese, and I see a lot of people doing stuff on YouTube where they're, to me, it's harassing. They're harassing migratory birds and whatnot. But is that fantasy? You're up flying, and then the birds just go, "Oh, look, there's a man-made contraption flying down our flight path. Let's go and join in." Does that ever happen to you, Milly?
Oh, it's fantasy with the shorebirds, that's for sure. They're way too flighty to be bothered with my aircraft. But I have had moments where I've flown with birds. So I took off at Maitland Airfield one time, and there was a pair of pelicans right next to me, and I was close enough to see him give me the side eye and just peel off to the right. And I was just yeah, no. As they went. And I've flown with wedge-tail eagles, and often see sea eagles down the coast. And a while ago, I was coming in on finals at Lake Macquarie Airport, and I had white-throated needle-tails next to me. So that was amazing. And I saw white-throated needle-tails at Lake Macquarie Airport yesterday too, which was really cool. So yeah, you do see the birds out there.
I'm so old, Milly, I still have to call them spine-tailed swifts.
Oh, okay, sure.
So, I like to think that with their amazing eyesight, that maybe the sea eagles or the wedgies are actually coming in to check out which one is at this time coming along. but then I think reality would probably prevail that the only birds that would be checking out a man-made contraption and joining in would probably be the bin chicken. So you probably get a bunch of bin chickens following you around.
Mine's bin chicken. I love a bin chicken.
I love a bin chicken. For international listeners, the bin chicken is the you're the ornithologist amongst us. I still call them white ibis. What do I have to call them today if I get my Australian bird guide?
I think it's an Australian white ibis. Yeah.
Australian white ibis.
I think so. Yeah.
Sacred ibis, black-necked ibis.
Yeah, I used to call them sacred ibis. Yeah.
Always been a white ibis to me. Okay, Milly. Well, now, what's your bird watching bucket list location? If you could choose one place anywhere in the world that you want to go,
in the world,
ticking off your list.
Okay. Where do I want to go ticking off my list? In the world, I think I'm still just wrapping my head around Australia, to be honest.
Well, it can be in Australia. Australia's in the world. Last time I checked.
I really want to go to far north Queensland. That's where I want to go. And I was meant to go on a bird banding trip up at Lockhart River a couple of years ago, and COVID put a stupid kibosh on it because the border was shut and we couldn't go. I was so devoted. But yeah, far north Queensland, that's where I want to
go. And of all the places that you've been so far, Milly, where's your favourite place that you've been bird watching?
Oh, I would have to say it's 80 Mile Beach in northwest Australia. It's incredible, in Roebuck Bay. When I was up there, the first time I went to 80 Mile Beach was on an expedition with the Australasian Wader Studies group, and it was a year where there were just hundreds of thousands of pratt-and-coals. And at one point we were banding birds on the beach, and we looked up and you couldn't see the sand anymore because the sand was just covered with hundreds of thousands of pratt-and-coals all the way to the horizon. You just couldn't. I've never seen anything like it. It was just phenomenal. Yeah.
Let's talk about the pratt-and-coals for a minute. Is that an unusual amount of pratt-and-coles to be overwintering in Australia?
Well, it wasn't overwintering. It was in February, so
Okay.
it was just before they took off on migration. But it's a seasonal thing, so I can't remember if it's when it's been a lot of rain or it's been a year. I can't remember. But all the locusts come out and they come to the plains to eat the locusts. So
Okay.
it varies the number of pratt-and-coles that show up there every year.
We just have so much more to understand about.
We
about
do.
birds like that. About how do they know where the locusts are going to be, or once the locusts are there, how do they communicate over such vast distances that, hey, dinner is served down there?
Yeah, incredible, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing. All right. What's your bucket list bird? What's the?
Ooh. Oh my goodness. What's my bucket list bird? Oh, I'm so unprepared. What's my bucket list bird? But I got like a huge list.
That's the challenge. You have to look. I had to let someone the other day, David Tan, who's studying pitters and bird strike in Asia.
Yeah.
He had to whittle it down to a family, and he almost got down to genus. Of course, he got into the pitters. I'll give you a bit of leeway.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I still yet to see an Asian dowitcher, which is very frustrating after being to Broome several times. So that's on there. What else is on there? Oh, yeah, in the hunter, I'm still trying to find a noisy pitter here, so that would be on my list as well. Yeah. I'm thinking of all the different birds I've missed. When I went to Tassie, I dipped on 40 spotted pardalotes, which was really disappointing. So still got to get that one.
Is it too hard? Even the bucket list bird is too hard.
Yeah.
Have you tipped off the spoon-billed sandpiper?
No, I haven't. Oh, is my bucket list bird like all over the world?
Yeah,
Oh, right. Okay.
We're not building artificial walls here, Milly. You can dream big on this show.
I can dream big on the show. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, okay. I would love to see a shoebill, actually. I think that would be pretty epic.
Oh, I think so. I think so. I mean, they're terrifying.
They would be terrifying. Yeah,
they are terrifying. But just imagine if you had the opportunity to spend some time in Shoebill Swamp, and you got to know a shoebill, and it was like a sweetie. It was like a big bird, not some terrifying reptilian bloody thing. Imagine if they come over and they want to rest on your shoulder and give you a bit of a cuddle. Oh, that's creepy, isn't it? That's the stuff of nightmares, really.
Creepy. They are quite terrifying. Yeah, I'll let you give that one a try, Grant.
Well, if only I got the opportunity to go to a shoebill swamp, that would be great. Well, that leads us into the one where you don't get any leeway, really. What's your favourite bird?
Oh, I think, my favourite shorebird would have to be a ruddy turnstone, because I do love calling them Rudy Toonstones, and I just think they're very funny. With the little orange legs and their fat belly.
Can I tell you a turnstone story just before we move on? I interviewed Claire O'Neill, who is a photographer in Cornwall the other day, and she was telling me that with her work photographing shorebirds in the UK, there's a particular problem, and she noticed it in turnstones. Human hair that is washing up on beaches is wrapping around the toes of turnstones, causing them to be amputated. You know how we see seagulls and pigeons in the city with their malformed feet? That's happening to turnstones on the coast of Cornwall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That's
Amazing.
incredible. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now, you nominated turnstones as your favourite shorebird.
Yeah.
Favourite bird. Come on.
My favourite bird.
It's tough.
Oh, I really love a crested shrike tit. I just think they're total dudes.
They are.
I really think they're awesome with their little mohawk going on there. So, and I love the colours as well. So, yeah.
Was that Satellas?
No, I said I love the colours as well.
Oh, the colours. I thought you said you love Satellas as well. Who doesn't love a Satella?
I do love a Satella too. Yeah.
Who doesn't love a Satella? But if you had to choose one.
One?
Yeah. The best bird.
Best bird ever.
There's only one out for that question.
Okay. Well, and then I will have to say a stint, a redneck stint, because my stints are rad, and it's really my flagship bird for wing threads. So we'll go with the redneck.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I love the stints, and the stint is almost emblematic of all the things we've been talking about before about the familiarity, yet the complete lack of familiarity that we have with shorebirds.
It's true.
Running around on a beach near you right now, you've probably seen it 100 times, and you've probably never noticed it. And that's the thing about redneck stints. I'll just say to anyone who's watching who is a potential guest on the Bird Emergency, the only out for that question is that the best bird is every bird. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Yes. I remember that for next time.
Yeah, that is. Well, Milly, it's been great to meet you. I am so glad, actually, before you started all the publicity stuff, Holly did tell me, you've got to speak to Milly. So I went stalking the website, and that was how I noticed, oh my God, she's got a plaster on her leg. What happened here? But I think because we're talking about the project, I just think it's so hard to get sponsors, right?
Yeah.
So let's give them a bit of airplay. Of course, BirdLife Australia is sponsoring the project. Do you know them all off by heart, or do you want me to run through them?
I can run them off. Yeah. So my biggest sponsor is the Peel Harvey Catchment Council in WA, which is the Peel Estuary, is one of the major shorebird sites in WA. They supported me. Airborne Australia, Avplan EFB, they offer me in-kind support with their navigation software. Australian Geographic, Remember the Wild, BirdLife Australia. I'm forgetting a couple. There's East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, the Hunted Bird Observers Club, Robot Bay Working Group, White Gum Aviation, and I'm forgetting someone, aren't I, Grant?
Bittens in Rice, Wader Crest.
Wader Crest, yeah, they're on my plane.
UWA, Remember the Wild, of course. You've actually got more, because you've rattled off more than are actually on the website. So that's great. Well done to all the organisations that have come on board, especially well done to you for putting it all together. The book is in, what do we call it? Pre-production, pre-publication?
It's currently in print right now with CSIRO, and it comes out in June, but you can pre-order it through the crowdfunding campaign, which gives me a little bit of an extra donation too, if you're into that, or you can pre-order it directly through, CSIRO publishing website. So they're the two ways you can get your hands on it.
Yep. So if you can, please do buy the book, and let me just refresh chuff.org, and there we go. Somebody's put a couple of $100 since we've been talking, Milly. So that's great. Good on you. Do head out to chuff.org and check out a shorebird flying adventure and kick in a couple of bucks, or if you want to remain anonymous and kick in what do we need? $54,125. If you've got that lying around, kick that in too.
I've been telling people, sponsor a kilometre for $5. If we had all 20,000 kilometres around the country sponsored for $5, we'd have $100,000. Wouldn't that be
so that's exactly the way to do it. That's great, Milly. We'll talk more about maybe some other possibilities that we might be able to.
That'd be awesome.
Build up that total, and I'll put you on the spot now, Milly. I want to do some updates as you're going around the country. So keep in touch, and we'll organise that, because as much as I want it to happen, I don't think that Win News or Prime News are going to be there when you land every day. Hopefully they are at some locations. But maybe we can work out a way to stream something onto your website as you go around, if that's something that you would want to do. So
I think that'd be really fun, Grant. Let's do it. Let's do it. Hey, Costa, come on for a question and answer session with us, and lend your not insignificant public profile. There we go. Oh, that's unfair, isn't it? That's totally unfair. But hey, I've done it. Too late now. Yeah. Milly, thanks so much for coming on board. Thanks for inviting me, Grant.
Don't break anything else in. Actually, how are you getting across to Broome? I mean, that's an undertaking in itself.
Yeah, it will be. So I'll have to trailer the Microlight up there. So I'm just got my fingers crossed for the border opening by May, but I've got a backup plan. So if the border opens, but we can't get up to the Kimberley if they're restricting movement up there, I will start at White Gum Farm, which is where I learned to fly in WA, just near Perth, because it's got obviously sentimental significance for me. And if the WA border doesn't open at all, then I will take off from here in Newcastle in Lake Macquarie and head north, and hopefully the border will be open by the time I get around.
And look, I'll just for the viewers, you can read those comments, but thanks, Annie. Do you want to read that one out?
Sure. See ya. This was a wonderful conversation. Loved it. Go, Milly. Excited about the book, and good luck on a successful fundraising. Cheers, Annie.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. And that's what it's all about, people getting behind you and making sure that it is a success. And, of course, let's remember, it's not all about Milly. It's all about the shorebirds, right?
So, about the birds.
and sometimes it pays to do something. And thanks, Costa. I'll reach out to you again on actually, Costa, you can let us know what the best way to do that is. And I think it would be great to follow Milly around. And I really want to know how the kids take to the whole thing once they meet you and they understand what you're doing, and to see what kind of excitement it generates. Because hey, didn't someone say, "I believe the children are our future"?
Yeah, I'm keen to see how the kids respond to it as well. So
yeah, and look, who knows what will come out of it? I mean, the opportunity to produce a whole lot of maybe programs and educational material for people to use down the track. You're going to be
got sponsorship from Hunter Bird Observers Club and the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership to put together an online e-learning pack that's going to accompany the book. So I've started putting that together. I want to create 10 lesson plans and online videos that teachers can then access for free. Each one's a different topic that goes into more depth about different details about shorebirds, so that they can bring shorebirds into the classroom, because that's one of the biggest difficulties that we face is, getting it out there in an educational way. There's only a limited number of BirdLife staff to go and do professional development workshops, but if there was an online resource for people to access, that would be amazing. So I'm in the process of creating that, and it will go with the book.
That's great. That's you'll be one of those giants that people are standing on the shoulders of. You know, Amelia Earhart, Amelia Formby. Be mentioned in the same breath, Milly. Look, thanks. It's been a great pleasure to meet you. I'm really excited for your journey. Makes me want to bring my little not quite so lofty project to bear. I want to do an e-bike expedition and basically calling in on schools and doing trivia nights and public meetings and whatnot. But hey, I got to get the crowdfunding thing together for that too. So because it's pretty expensive to go places.
It can be, yes.
Well, the most expensive thing is actually going places and having to stay places.
Yeah, it is.
That's the most expensive thing.
For my project. Yeah.
Yeah. So, great. It's going to be a joy following you around, Milly. And who knows? Maybe a Great Eastern Curlew will meet you and accompany you on a couple of 100 Ks.
That'd be amazing.
It would be. It would be.
I've said that.
Milly Formby, Wing Threads. Wing Threads is what you need to look up, and go to chuffed.org and hit that donation button. We'll just see whether anything's happened in the last couple of minutes because I love doing this.
You've become a compulsive chuffed checker.
No. Well, I will be checking regularly and maybe driving people mad on Twitter.
Maybe. Do it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Milly.
Grant,
this has been the Bird Emergency. I'm Grant Williams. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for putting your comments in. It's always fun when people are joining in and we can make the conversation a bit more exciting than just me. Thanks, Milly. Love you. So, folks, just an update. Just before pressing publish and giving you this episode, Milly's fundraising is at $71,610, just marginally short of the $75,000 target. So if you would like to help Milly get to her target, please go to thebirdemergency.com/support Milly, and you will be able to easily give her $5, $10, $20, however much, and see if we can push her all the way in the last couple of days of that fundraising effort. And hey, if you are feeling generous, then you can support my efforts and the show at thebirdemergency.com/support the show. Bye-bye, everyone.